Yeah,
Oh,
right.
my goodness.
So that voice you hear saying, oh my goodness, oh my gosh. I'm so excited about this guest today because we go way back. I mean, we go back. Like we were tied up and I farted on his back, and we'll explain more of that later. But this brother right here, we did the well-received, most loved show on UPN called Homeboys in Outer Space. You've seen him in School Days with Spike Lee and Giancarlo Esposito, Sam Jackson, and all the guys, and most notably known, most popularly known for his role as Ron Johnson on the hit show A Different World. We have Mr. Darryl M. Bell in the building. What's up, y'all?
How do?
Yo.
How you feel?
What's going on?
Reunited.
We are reunited.
It feels so good.
Maury?
Oh, my God. Look, Ty. Hit it. Oh, my God.
Oh, but that, of course, it was our characters from Homeboys in Outer Space, which, listen, man, I have fun.
I've talked with Eric Van Lowe, the head writer for Homeboys, who talks about how proud he is of that show. And what's interesting, I tell folks I have, everyone doesn't have the privilege of having a career where you do something that is so revered as A Different World. So here we are 30 years later, and, we just did an event with the cast, and we're still out as ambassadors for HBCUs and all of the legacy that A Different World has. So whenever they talk about the best television shows in television history, A Different World will usually find its way into that conversation, even if it's vis-a-vis Cosby, right? But inevitably, at least once or twice a year, somebody will put out the list of the top 100 worst television shows, and Homeboys in Outer Space is always on that list.
Yes!
So I'm at the top and the bottom of the best and the worst. And the other thing that's interesting about it, though, is when you talk to people about Homeboys, and everyone talks about how much they hate it, but ask them to name the episode they watched. And most people don't know. They really hate it by reputation, more so than having watched it and said, oh, this is so awful.
Right.
Because there were a few episodes that were actually really good.
Yeah, we had some.
And because we might have listeners or viewers who this is beyond their generation, right? They don't even know what this is. What was the premise of Homeboys in Outer Space? Okay. And it came out around, 96, 97? If I'm not
it came out, we shot 96.
96.
Yeah, it came out 96. You want to break it down, D?
Well, that's part of what the issue was. So, if you go back to Star Trek, one of the things that was so forward-thinking about Star Trek was its diversity. You had all these different species and people and so forth, and they were in positions of power. Nichelle Nichols was, not only a Black person in the future of some significance, but also you saw the first interracial kiss on television with her and William Shatner. So it was groundbreaking in that respect. So the idea originally for Homeboys was to be a parody of Star Trek. So much so that they even hired James Doohan, who played Scotty on Star Trek, to be our ship's engineer. So when we were having problems, James Doohan would run out, Captain, I'm giving it all she's got. He's giving us that, which was so cool, to the point where Paramount, and because UPN doesn't exist anymore, the United Paramount Network, they were a division of Paramount. Paramount sued its own subsidiary because it said that Homeboys was infringing on Star Trek IP. And that's why James Doohan had to get off the show.
Oh, wow.
Because they said that we couldn't use that character because it was too close to what he was doing for real on Star Trek. So the idea was to do a parody of Star Trek. So, and again, to portray Black folks in the future in outer space. Now, what happened with that, it was a fledgling network. We were doing it and shooting it at Disney. So there was a battle between executives and writers of what it should be. And we did one episode, which actually was really funny. And I don't know if it was this one, but it was something that if it wasn't this specific episode, this is still the circumstance. We did this episode where we landed on this planet where they had lost all contact with the universe. They only got one signal, and that signal was from Bet. All they got was BET. So when Ty and Morris showed up, they thought black people were gods because all they could see was like the Jeffersons and Good Times, and black folks showed up. They were like, oh my God, and they were bowing down to black folks. So some executive had the brilliant idea that that's the show. Every week they're going to land on a different planet where something happens. And then we went to the planet where everybody was naked. Then we went to the planet where it was this. Then we went to the planet, and it was awful. And it was so funny. It just got awful from that point on. And I had two opinions that I think encapsulated what was wrong with Homeboys. One was now people may say it was controversial, but I got a call from Bill Cosby. Bill said, I don't think there's anything reprehensible about it, but it just reminds me of bad Saturday morning cartoons. And I was like, okay, that's probably right if you think about its sensibility. But the really insightful one was when I bumped into this stand-up comedian who said, I loved that show and I was sure I was being gassed until they rattled off multiple episodes. And I was like, wow, you're not joking. And then said the issue or the problem you guys have is that you're trying to be too lighthearted and silly. You should be biting like in Living Color. You should be doing serious satire. Then it would be great, which it was what it was supposed to be.
Right.
But also in America, Americans don't really get satire. That's why Benny Hill's not really popular here.
Right.
British folks get satire. We don't really get it.
And all the
Americans aren't really into satire. But this came from Roseanne Barr. Roseanne Barr was a huge fan, and she said,
I can see that.
I wish, she said, I really enjoyed you guys. You're doing a great job. But I think you're missing the mark by really not being cutting edge like in Living Color and pushing boundaries. And I was like, that's what they wanted to do. But the network wouldn't let them do it. And then, because we were only on for one season, there was a point at which they wanted to renew our show for like 4 years. They were just going to give us an automatic pick of 4 years. And I can't remember what happened or why it didn't happen, but then UPN collapsed shortly thereafter because our numbers were good enough.
And mind you, I mean, we had one of the toughest critics from the LA Times. It was Howard Rosenberg at the time, and he hated everything. And he loved our show.
That's funny.
Some say it was a kiss of death because he doesn't like anything. But, I go back and I say, man, I was 26, 27. Like, it was, to be at that point, to be making the money I was making and to be working with D, which was great because obviously you come up watching a different world and you're like, yo, this is dope. We get to work together. We have fun, even in the bad stuff, even with the bad shit, we still have fun. I know I have fun. And there were times I looked and I just was like, man, okay, let's just suck it up and go. And I would get calls back from New York. My old manager, I remember I got in arguments, called me. He was like, yo, Flex, they clowning you here in the U.S. I was like, I don't care. Or whatever, I'm making $35K a week. You ain't give me that money. But I mean, I was, I got into this big argument one time with Ed Lover when we were doing the, when we did the press. We would do the press, and you have to make the calls in the morning all across to the radio stations. And we literally got in an argument on the phone. It was Ed Lover and Dr. Dre. And Dr. Dre is actually my cousin. And, he was stuck in the middle. I felt bad. He was with the command, so he said, that's some trash. I was like, well, later for you, man. I said, Who's the Man was a bomb. Like, we was going.
Who's the Man slander?
Yeah, no, we were going back and forth. We were going back and forth on
That's
it.
Not
and it was,
good.
I mean, we're so past that now. That's my dude. We're good. I mean, we were young and ego and all that stuff. But it was a dichotomy of the response in our community, as opposed to like, Roseanne, because our community was, Spike Lee said we were the Amos and Andy of the 90s.
Don't get me started.
I was like, Spike, you know me. I've done stuff for you at your shop. I've done it. You've never hired me. I've never even auditioned for you. I said, so until you do something like that, you can't. You don't put my name. Don't say nothing. It was just, and like you said, making remarks and not even watching the show. The effect was off the name. And I remember when I met with Eric Van Loo, because they tied me to the show because I had a deal with UPN. And I had a deal with UPN. I remember Jennifer Part there. She's the one who gave me my holding deal. And they sent me a bunch of scripts. This was actually the funniest script out of the bunch that I read. And being a Trekkie, I saw they was like, yeah, we got James Doohan. I was like, and I didn't know the name. And then Eric was like, yeah, because first there was no title on it. And then Eric was like, yeah, we're going with Homeboys in Outer Space. And I was like, no.
The title's got a lot of people.
I said, yo, no, don't know. He was like, no, it's going to be cool. I said, we're in 96. Homeboy, that's 80, but he was bent on using it.
I can't, but didn't Miguel Nunez
have something to do with Miguel and Miguel Nunez, Stan, what was Stan's last name? Oh my gosh.
And see,
Foster.
Stan Foster. Because I started to say my other friend, Stan Washington.
Yeah, Stan Foster. And then I was told something like Eddie Murphy had something to do with it as well. Miguel said that, so I don't know. But I know that he and Stan definitely were forefronts of pushing that show.
And you gotta, the thing about it is, Black people historically, we've never been allowed to just have shows that may not be the best show on television, groundbreaking. Yeah. White people get to have fun, quirky shows, stuff they just throw out there, stuff to pass the time, procedurals, all of these things. But for us, everything got to be Emmy nominated. Everything has to be groundbreaking. We don't have the opportunity to just throw up a show, and if it don't hit, it don't hit. Move on.